Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. I hereby call the Disaster Relief Committee to order. Clerk, please take the roll. Hit the blue button, folks. Committee, before we get started today, first of all, we've got a quorum. Members, because of the topic of what we're dealing with today, obviously it's a very difficult conversation to have. I'm excited and grateful to Speaker Sexton for convening this committee. We didn't have to have this committee by structure, but he chose to do it because of his interest in trying to help. And I know each of you feel the same. And so before we get going from a point of personal privilege, I've got a couple of members that I'd like to call on first, and we'll open it up quickly for personal orders and then get to the business of the committee. But for members that are from the northeast part of the state, their districts have had impact directly from the flooding. I would like just take a moment to give them an opportunity to address the committee from their perspective. And so, Leader Alexander, we're going to start with you. So, Leader Alexander, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for everyone that's in the room and for this committee. Our area, Washington County, where I am from, boasts 24 miles of the Nolichucky River. That's in my district. It's the prettiest part of my county, the place where people went to kayak and fish and swim. Houses lined those banks, farmland went right up to the river, and to watch it be destroyed by an act of God has been very hard. We've seen the power of God in the power of the flood, but we've also seen God in the power of the way he used his people to help each other out. We had 119 homes destroyed in my district, 93 damaged, 60 major, 33 with some minor damage or some significant damage. 5 bridges destroyed, 2 of which were state highway bridges. We have repaired 2 of them that were county bridges. We have opened up 2 other bridges, and 1 still needs to be totally rebuilt. More than 23.6 miles of the Nolichucky was washed away. Our farmland has been destroyed. That's where we grew our green beans and our tomatoes and our strawberries. That's where we provided hay for the farmers across our county. It's been massive. We have people who have lost their homes, who have lost their businesses, who have lost their everything that their grandmother and their great-grandmother had left them. It's more mind-boggling than you can even imagine. I've stood on the ground with the sheriff and watched us build a road to get to these people on the very first day, the morning of the flood. We watched the road get built by a private guy who came in and said, "I've got the equipment, let me start, and I'll help your county." We watched that road go together. We crossed over it, went to see if everybody was okay and what we had to deal with. I just asked this committee, when you look at these requests for flood relief, that you understand No one in Washington County ever dreamed this would happen to them. And it can happen to any county in this state. And I just thank the speaker and the governor for their willingness to help us, and for Bachili for all the work they've done on our roads. And we've got a lot more work to do. Right now in Washington County, we still need $51 million just to complete our infrastructure loss. That doesn't count the people who have lost their homes, that have mortgages on them, that got tax bills that we hope to change here with the bill that Chairman Faison's bringing. That how do you pay taxes on a home that doesn't exist anymore? How do you pay for a mortgage and then build back when you still owe on that mortgage? It's very hard what we've got to go through. And I appreciate your time to listen to us. I thank you for your mercy and your kindness for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader Alexander. And Representative Jones, recognize you for a few moments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a freshman, and so this was that morning, we hadn't even really got to the general election yet. And so that morning started out just like any other morning that quickly changed to pure fear for the lives of 62 people that were on the roof of a hospital that we couldn't get to. It changed from land that we said, the interstate bridge that was completely gone, the change of homes that were destroyed, talking to Mayor Everly constantly with what he was dealing with. Then I turned to Carter County, where I didn't even think about being another river there that was also flooding, and talked to Mayor Woodby and the destruction that she was facing, and just the homes that were destroyed there. She had over 600 homes destroyed, and 70, close to 100 that were actually destroyed, and over 600 damaged. And then we had the industrial park in Unicoi County that was totally wiped out, that we lost 300 jobs that day. So it totally impacted our whole community in so many different ways. And I thank this body for reaching out to all of us in that area during that time and coming to our aid. I know several people on this committee came to Unicoi County and worked and brought relief efforts there. And so I cannot tell you how much we appreciate that during that very difficult time. And it's still there. We're rebuilding, we're resilient, but we're still there. And this bill and a lot of the work that the speaker and the governor is doing to bring relief to our area is so appreciated and so needed. And so I know I share Carter County with Chairman Hill, and I know he has a lot more details about that. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your consideration. I also have some books that our Utilities Director and Economic Development put together for you all to look at some of the damage there in Unicoi County, and you should have that at your desk. But thank you so much for what you've done and what you will do for us. And I just ask that you continue to keep our communities in your prayers as we move forward with our rebuild.
Thank you, Representative Jones. Chairman Halsey, a beautiful District 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that very much. My county did not get the damage that these other counties got. We're right next to them. But of course, folks in my district went over there to see and to deal and work and try to help folks over there, which is what I want to say. Most of the time, government is not efficient. Most of the time, they're slow. But folks in Tennessee are not slow, and they are efficient, and they have good hearts. And the outpouring of people who came from all across the state and other places to the aid of these folks was absolutely amazing. And I just want to say I appreciate that more than you have any idea. Now government's going to come on this end of it and see if we can do what we ought to do to try our best to make these people whole. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman Halsey. And I believe it's my turn. I serve the 3rd House District, which is all of Johnson County, part of Carter, part of Sullivan, and part of Hawkins County. And two of the 4 counties received significant damage that I represent. And the volunteer spirit that has been mentioned multiple times already on this committee was demonstrated time and time and time again through the emergency phase of the recovery, in the emergency phase of the disaster. I saw people standing with people. They didn't ask what their political perspective was. They didn't ask, what their socioeconomic status was. They didn't ask who their employer was. They just loved on each other because every barrier that you could imagine, from homes to yards to banks to roads, was removed. But every physical barrier that you could think of simply didn't exist anymore. And we were and are a community together, looking out for each other, caring about each other, receiving help from all over the state, all over the country, in a way that I've never seen before, that I don't know that our area of the state has ever seen before. And we're grateful. And to bear witness to that is something that I'm grateful that I got to be in office for. And as we continue on, and I'm so grateful for this special session in this committee, and the work of this committee, because our people, and not just the people on this committee, but other reps and members, our people are hurting. And they're going to be hurting, and the recovery is not something that is instant. And this body has a tremendous opportunity to reach out and say, we have a saying in the Northeast part that sometimes we feel like the state ends in Knoxville. And today we have a tremendous opportunity to show them that that is not the case. And that this body, where so many from this body have shown up in even my district, but there is fiscal constraints. We have to be very careful what we do. But this body hears the concern of the eastern part of this state, and that we're willing to stand together. And so I also would be remiss if I didn't say thanks to the first responders, thanks to the nonprofits, thanks to the neighbors, thanks to the churches, thanks to all the different people that have stood in the gap. And there were governmental entities certainly that helped and stood in the gap in many places. But our end of the state was in such dire circumstances. If it had not been for people, the number of folks that perished would have been much, much greater. And one is too many. But we are grateful for the help that we've received. But we are devastated. And we are in not just governmental need, but the individuals need help. And I'm hopeful that we can find a way to do that through this body. So with that being said, we're going to get to the calendar. Item number 1, House Bill 6002 by Leader. And we've got Leader Cochran. We have a motion, second. You're recognized.
To this new, there we go. Now we're rolling. Thank you, Chairman and Committee, for the opportunity to present this very important piece of legislation to hopefully reduce red tape and bureaucracy that is sometimes involved in disaster relief. And so I'm going to give you an overview of the bill. If we need to get maybe a little bit deeper, we have our Commissioner of TEMA, Commissioner Sheehan, as well as some others who are available to testify if we need to get into deeper detail. So HB 6002 provides flexibility in unemployment benefit administration during disasters. It allows the Commissioner of Labor and Workforce Development to suspend certain reporting requirements for applicants who reside in counties for which the state has requested a major disaster declaration. Now, some of those reporting requirements that can be slashed if the commissioner sees that it would be helpful. The registering to work requirement, looking for work, being available to work, and then there's a waiting period. There's usually a 1 week waiting period before benefits start. So waiving certain requirements in counties that are declared disaster areas. Another very important portion of this bill is the portion that grants state emergency management agencies the authority to assist local political subdivisions or emergency management agencies with recovery efforts on public property if requested by the local entities. That sounds simple enough, but currently there are some additional steps that have to take place before that help can come in. This would be eliminating those steps and really saving some very valuable time to get recovery efforts started. So with that, I will yield to questions, or again, we have some folks from the administration who are willing and on the list to testify as well.
Members, any questions from the sponsor? Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is on this unemployment requirements. So these people for 4 months now have been having to jump through all the hoops and hurdles of applying for 5 jobs each week and doing all that to be able to get unemployment for jobs that have been washed away.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is my understanding that from this point, this would allow the commissioner, give the commissioner the ability to waive those requirements.
Representative Mitchell.
So they've been having to jump through these hurdles.
To the best of my knowledge, Representative, yes.
Representative Mitchell.
This is another reason the governor should be ashamed of himself for waiting 4 months to help these people that have been homeless, jobless, and in this dire situation. And North Carolina has done this 3 times, given 3 rounds of aid, and this governor has waited this long. And these people have been having to jump through these kind of bureaucratic hoops. Governor, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Chairman Howell, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the bill. I read through it today, and I think it's a good bill. I really do. But in my mind, I try to always summarize things and tell me if I'm on track. In addition to waiving the certain unemployment requirements, what this bill also does is gives TEMA the authority to perform additional duties. It doesn't necessarily give them additional authority, but to perform additional duties. I like that part of this bill. And their duties would be to work with local EMAs, local governments to make sure that our people are taken care of. Is that a pretty good summary?
Leader, you recognize.
Thank you very much. Chairman, that is correct. Again, currently there are some additional steps involved in getting TEMA there on the ground, getting their participation with local emergency management, local governments. This eliminates some of those steps. So yes, I think it'll make the process much more efficient and enable us to get help much faster.
Thank you.
Leader Barrett, you recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Wasn't aware I was a leader, but I appreciate that.
You're a leader in our hearts.
Well, thank you. Before I ask my question, you didn't give me an opportunity because I don't represent a district over in East Tennessee, but I am a Greene County adopted son, and we have family farm in Greene County about 3 miles away from the Nolechucky Dam that was severely damaged and threatened throughout the course of this event. I had the good fortune or the misfortune, depending upon how you look at it, to go over and spend some time working and helping. I was in the chairman's district. I was in Chairman Faison's district as well. And what I saw personally was an unbelievable outpouring of support from not only Tennesseans, but folks across the country. Chairman Hawk put me in touch with Crossroads Community Church, their Cowboy Church in Greene County, that was acting as a helicopter rescue base for folks that were these helicopter companies over in Gatlinburg that do sightseeing were coming in, donating their time, their fuel, their hours, their labor to land at this church, load up with supplies, and fly into the back areas of the mountains where trucks and folks could not get to except on foot. It was a blessing to me to be able to go over there and help, and certainly a blessing to those to see folks rolling up into an old skating rink off of 11E in Greene County. That morning that I arrived was empty, and 14 hours later, working with that church and the folks there, bringing in tractor trailer loads full of supplies from Texas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. That's the support that those folks got in the emergency response. It came from the people. It came from the folks. Certainly, I wish we could have responded quicker as a government, but government doesn't do anything really quickly, unfortunately. So I just want to say that I appreciate the folks, the members that are on this committee that have dealt with that issue on a firsthand basis. And it was my pleasure to be able to go over there and provide what little scratching of the surface assistance I could. And with that, Leader Cochran, my question is, this bill is only pertaining to relieving the requirements or reporting requirements as it relates to unemployment benefits. It doesn't address TennCare, and there are also reporting requirements and hoops that those folks have to go through in order to get their health care coverage. Could we not amend this bill to add TennCare to this as well?
Leader, you recognize.
Thank you, Chairman. While I mean, you're correct. This bill does not touch on that. I think, that's something that perhaps we can look at during regular session. Again, I think getting this one through the process quickly is important, and so I think we'd like to keep it in its current posture. But I think you bring up an important issue, and let's if that needs to be fixed, let's fix that also.
I would really urge you and leadership to find a way to do that. That would make this bill much better and help a lot more people.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We're going to go to Representative Burkhart. Okay, we've got questions or objection. Got a second? Seeing none. Clerk, open the vote. I believe that's the proper term. All right, members, the ayes have it. House Bill 6002 moves to Finance, Ways and Means.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
Members, we're going to go out of session here just real quickly if the gavel will stay intact. And mayors, if you guys would without objection, we're out of session. We're going to have the mayors from Northeast Tennessee come up and testify very briefly. If you guys would go ahead and make your way forward, state your name for the record. And it actually is a treat to have them here. They were here in town for other things, and we were able to snag them. And so we appreciate their time very much to come and tell the committee about their experience. So please have a seat, hit the button. We'll start and on this end with Mayor Potter of beautiful Johnson County. Notice I said beautiful Johnson County. And Mayor Potter, state your name for the record and have at it. You got 3 minutes.
Johnson County Mayor in the far north.
There you are.
Larry Potter, Johnson County Mayor in the far northeastern state of Tennessee. The Hurricane Helene, as of today, has been 4 months and 1 day since the hurricane hit. We had 53 homes is gone, 130 major significant damage. Is your car totaled or half totaled for a total 183? We loaned our highway department $1.5 million from debt service. We need money bad. We spent over $350,000 in gravel, and it's just a waste because with the snow removal we've had, we missed 44 days of school because of the hurricane. I think today they started school back on a 2-hour delay. That's 18 more days for 62 days of total school missed. Our county roads is a disaster in itself. Community people, they cut their way out of the hollers. When they tried to go back home, they had to cut their way back in. The trees to devastation, the water, the ditches turned to raging streams to river. Unfortunately, we did lose one person. That's one too many. If it hadn't been for EMA and volunteer fire departments, neighbors getting the people to higher ground, we would have lost more. Our road department is beyond exhausting their funds. If we don't get help, we've told the road department you will be laying off your help come springtime, and we don't have no choice. 421 to Boone, North Carolina was wiped out. 91 to Virginia. I can be in Boone, North Carolina, 25 minutes. Abbott, Virginia, in 20 minutes. They was both wiped out. Thank goodness the state reacted on that very quickly. Our Swiftwater Rescue, they graduated from the class in 2 days. 2 days that night, they had to put it in action rescuing people. We need help. Parkdale Mills, our largest employer, 410 people don't have a job. The largest employer in the county. What do you tell them? I've had 9 days off, which I signed up for a job. That's okay. But how do you tell people? What are you going to do to help them? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Potter. Mayor Woodby, go ahead. You're recognized.
I'm going to try to get myself together because it's tough. We've all had a tough time in Northeast Tennessee. What these mayors and myself have experienced is beyond imaginable, what we've seen. So I'm the mayor in Carter County. On September 27th, our county was destroyed in a matter of 6 hours. As the rain came, the water raised. This was a hurricane that nobody in our lifetimes had ever seen. Carter County had 677 homes affected, major or minor damage, with 74 of those homes completely destroyed. And when I say destroyed, completely washed from their foundations. Not only the foundations, but the land is no longer there. Leaving Carter County with 70 roads majorly impacted, included 4 bridges completely annihilated, and Hampton High School with over 6 feet of water throughout the campus. Hampton High School has employed and educated 400 students and 65 faculty. It's the largest high school in Carter County, and it is a complete loss. We have those students and faculty crammed into an old elementary school, and let me just tell you, the mental health situation that we're dealing with from this impact of this storm is unbelievable. The debris was not only trees, but also all of the contents, including the hearts and generations of memories for families in Carter County. The debris was estimated over 120,000 cubic yards, costing over $8 million. The debris riddled our roads, schools, rivers, creeks, and lake. In an effort for debris removal, there's a lot of protocol by FEMA. FEMA procedures and protocol must be followed. Carter County is not a county in Florida and did not have the experience with debris in other coastal counties that are normally hurricane ready. Thanks to the quick action of this state and to TEMA for implementing the HEAL program. That was truly a game changer for Northeast Tennessee. That was a very successful program, and we very much appreciate what you've done for us. And I also want to give a thank you to the director of TEMA and his staff for what they've done for Northeast Tennessee and how they have treated our residents, our leaders, and been right there with us as boots on the ground. And that is so appreciated by all of us. You should be very proud of that representation. Carter County has created projects with FEMA estimated at $50 million as of today. We will have, by the end of the week's project with FEMA, estimated to be over $100 million. FEMA has obligated $10 million just to Carter County already. We are a small and economically distressed county already, providing upfront funding for over $100 million for recovery of Carter County that was never in our budget. The recovery for Carter County, as I'm sure as every other Northeast Tennessee county, has been slated for 6 years, could be 8. Along with all of the breakdown for Carter County between the highways, the roads, the bridges, not only losing our largest high school, but we have 11 other schools that were impacted by winds and water and county debris removal. The estimated total is $92 million for Carter County and $135 million in residential loss for my citizens. So to say the impact of this storm was large, it was more than words can imagine. So, but thank you again for considering and listening to our pleas for help in Northeast Tennessee. And I also want to say thank you to the Northeast Tennessee Caucus, because each and every one of those members has been right there with us every step of the way. And it's been some fabulous leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Morrison.
Sir.
You're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I represent Greene County. My name is Kevin Morrison. I'm the mayor of Greene County, Tennessee. We have 32 miles of river along the Nolichucky River. To give you some statistics about this flood and how it impacted Greene County, Tennessee, God's country, sir. When the sun came up on September the 28th and the waters began receding, the 10 bridges in Greene County spanning the Nolichucky River were closed or destroyed. 150 county roads were closed, washed out, or destroyed. There was 15,000 people without power. 20,000 of those were trapped on the south side of the river of Greene County without water, food, medicine, or even a means of evacuation. 74,000 across Greene County, which is our population, would soon be without water within 48 hours. Greene County spent $625,000 on bottled water just in the first handful of hours. We spent $2.5 million in the first 72 hours trying to mitigate and save some residents. We've had 114 homes damaged, 60 of which were destroyed completely, resulting in $22 million in individual damage to our citizens. $100 million in public infrastructure damage, $15 million just to the water pumping station that the town of Greenville has, the Greenville Water Commission, that supplies water to 6 public utilities. They're currently on temporary pumps, pumping 4.5 million gallons a day, each one of them requiring a tanker load of diesel every day, resulting in a $225,000 bill per month to the Greenville Water Commission. Davy Crockett Birthplace State Park was completely destroyed in the foundation, down to the foundation. The park rangers have found 46 of the original foundation stones for the park cabin. Kinzer Park, a park that we run jointly with the TVA, suffered $500,000 in damage. 79 of the 97 camp spots were completely destroyed. Greene County sustained one fatality, and we conducted over a dozen water rescues. When going back to the bridges, Bird's Bridge, which is a county bridge, sustained $3 million worth of damage to even mitigate it or rebuild it back. Poplar Springs Bridge, $6.2 million, which is a complete reconstruction. And then, of course, 2 state bridges, one of which was Kinzer Bridge, which spans 60 feet above the river under normal conditions. And then Ernest Bridge, which is to be mitigated by the state as well, and they're out there working to do that. Mr. Chairman, to demonstrate our need or sense of urgency, Greene County took a devastating toll in 2011 with the tornadoes. We lost 11 members of our community. And only a year after I was elected in 2019 were we reimbursed for those damages. Sir, we can't continue to cash flow this recovery. We're not going to survive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Sir?
I guess it's my turn, but it becomes extremely personal. Like Mr. Potter said, we had 52 people in the hospital. And our governor, after we contacted him, we got air support. Those 52 lives were saved. We lost 6 workers in our industrial park. 24 other people were pulled from the river, and their lives were saved by swift water crews that came in. Our industrial park destroyed. Over 400 jobs gone. Our only hospital destroyed. 172 employees. We had 1 school damaged. We had 6 industries that we lost that day. And I've always wanted to be Unicoi County to be #1 in the state at something. We're #1 in unemployment rate. I never wanted to have that distinction. I've lived there all my life. I've worked all my life, 33 years of public service. I've never seen anything like this in my county. I can't thank Mr. Sheehan that's sitting back here, Tima, and the crew from the state, as Patty said, have been wonderful, have been there, have been supportive. Quite frankly, we was talking about mental health. I struggled with that in the first 2 months. But with the support we got from the state, with the support we had that people brought in, it's just unbelievable. We had people bringing ambulances in. We lost 3 ambulances. We lost a fire truck at the hospital. We had fire trucks donated to us. They were used, but they were usable. Ambulances, they were used, but they had them refurbished. We do have enough to make runs now. We had 20 roads that were severely damaged, washed out, 10 bridges that are in various, either have to be totally replaced or replaced. But one of our 2 major bridges to our south end, Chestore Bridge, was completely washed away. Estimated cost $13 million for that one bridge. My entire surplus for Unicoi County was $1.2 million last year. I'm a banker, but I can't stretch money that far. I have 40 years of experience. But, you know, as the speaker said, and the other gentleman, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, all the people that came, and not just came from here, but came from all over this country and helped us. That's something I'll never forget. Our governor helped. Mr. Sheehan helped. We're dealing with FEMA just like everybody else. It's definitely a challenge, but you know, we have to go through the process. We just do not have and cannot front the money. We get the project approved, but if we don't have the money, we can't start the project. So I encourage you to do everything that you can do to support. Our county's never asked for anything. And I'm not begging for a handout. I'm asking for a hand up. And I know y'all do the right thing. And please forgive me for being emotional. But I love my county and I love the people that live there, or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Members, we've had a request while we're out of session to have TEMA come testify for a moment. If there's somebody here from TEMA, I believe it's Alex. And the director's here as well. Gentlemen, you've got 5 minutes to start with, and we'll see where it goes from there. And you're recognized.
Thank you. I've spent a lot of time with these mayors, speaking with a number of you as well who represent this area. It is every bit as heartbreaking and scary and uncertain as they've shared. And, the state of Tennessee has done a lot on Governor Lee's direction for us to be innovative and to be fast and to remove all red tape. Certainly would not be perfect, but we have done extraordinary things that I think will be important for us to do in the future as well, as we look at how we manage what is certainly an increasing number and severity of disasters, not just in Tennessee, but seemingly the world over. And cash flow is a tremendous problem for these jurisdictions. So FEMA has reimbursement programs, but they are reimbursement programs. And you've heard all four of these mayors talk about the incredible upfront costs of dealing with these expenditures. And the reason the HEAL program, the Helene Emergency Assistance Loan Program, is so valuable is that it didn't create a problem of duplication of benefits, but it gave them vital cash that was necessary to pay for certain things. Having additional programs like that would be incredibly beneficial as well. Just a heartbreaking situation if you've not been there. There are still volunteer opportunities there. The Appalachia Service Project is committed to build 200 homes. They have 17 currently underway, and there's lots of work to be done there. Alex.
I'll keep it very short. Alex Pelham, the Chief of Staff at TEMA. It is heartbreaking from the morning that we were there. One of the first calls we got was from one of our district coordinators who had went out to that hospital and had started helping to get people out. And we continue to keep up with her, and I'm goosebumps as I'm talking about it right now. And we kept speaking with Michelle, and she was one of the 52 that was airlifted off the roof, was one of our employees. So it's something that hit us home at our mission. It hit us home with our staff. And I'm proud to say we played a part in helping these mayors and these communities move on, and we'll continue to. It's a mission, and it's driven, and helping Tennesseans is why we're here. Thank you.
Members, any questions for TEMA? We've got Representative Himmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to thank you, Director Sheehan, and Alex, and the rest of your staff for the professionalism and that you displayed during this event. My district is several hundred miles from this, and never thought I'd have to. I was spending my Saturday calling Alex because I have a hospital system in my district who owns a hospital in the affected area, and they needed life-saving emergency equipment, and so they were able to get in touch with appropriate authorities and get those equipment airlifted in there in short order. So I want to really appreciate you for that. Also, Director, thank you for having me out recently to tour the facility at the TEMA headquarters and talk a little bit about this flood recovery. One of the things we discussed, and just for the members' benefit, and love to hear your feedback as well, that from I know it was, I can't remember the acronym you used, but it was the first time y'all had a bunch of other agencies kind of come together in a certain area, kind of like mirroring what federal response have done. And one of the feedback I got from several agencies was, finding a location was hard. And so one of the things we discussed was about creating a template for a primary and a backup in each 95 counties for these disaster recovery efforts when and if they unfortunately happen. So I was just curious if you've had any more thought around that and what we should be doing and looking at.
Yes, sir. It's a multi-agency resource center. We used it the first time in 2016 in the aftermath of the Gatlinburg Sevier County wildfire. We set up a pretty large multi-agency resource center with the idea of being survivor-centric, and so that survivors wouldn't have to go from place to place to go and get their driver's license, to get a new birth certificate, to go register for unemployment assistance, but they could go to one place and get those things and talk to insurance agents. And then if there's a federal declaration, to talk to someone that can help them get registered with FEMA for individual assistance, or SBA to get a disaster loan. We have not yet made more progress on helping counties identify a primary, secondary location. There's challenges with that, ADA compliance if we bring in the federal government, but we will be pushing our counties to do both primary and a secondary location. Some places will just have a hard time finding some places big enough. We struggled in Sevier County, even as hard as that is to believe, but when every business is full, it just gets difficult.
Representative Warner, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, thank you for being here. I know you've had a tough, past few months. Could you give the committee and maybe the public watching a brief overview of what the state has spent so far in these counties? And plus, I kind of got a 2 or 3 part question here. Could you also comment on the federal government's part, how they've reacted, how much money's been this came down from the federal government, and whether that money has to be paid back and all?
All right. So typically, immediate disaster response and disaster recovery is at the lowest level of government. So it'd be typically the most local jurisdiction. So it'd be the road department or fire department or solid waste authority. And in this instance, we saw debris fields, for instance, that crossed jurisdiction that were carrying hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of debris that didn't even originate in Tennessee. They originated in North Carolina and were carried and deposited along our roadways, along our stream beds, in our reservoirs, threatening public infrastructure. And we looked at the jurisdiction of Douglas Lake, for instance, where we estimated early on that 1 million square feet of debris was residing. And we worked with our federal partners. We had legal counsel, the Attorney General's office support to evaluate that. And who owns the water was a question. And, these are kinds of things that come up pretty frequently in very unurgent settings. But we weren't going to allow ourselves to dally around who needed to clean up the debris, because it could threaten the dam, it could threaten 2 public water systems. It could be a danger to those navigating the rivers or on Douglas Lake, rather. And so I asserted that it was a water of the state in accordance with existing case law and statutes. And we worked with FEMA to mission assign the Tennessee Valley Authority to begin cleaning that. That contracting process probably took a couple of weeks longer than I would have been thrilled about, but they're out there right now actively removing massive amounts of debris from Douglas Lake. In a similar way, we had to make some jurisdictional arguments, which is why one of the bills was before you today, around removing debris from waterways. Typically, that is not a responsibility of the state. There are some things in the statute where we could point to and say that we can do anything necessary to apply order after a disaster. But one of the reasons for the statute that's before you today was to help clean that up and just make it no-brainer. No one can come back and argue. So we are in the process now of removing debris from tributaries and waterways in the remaining areas. So we divided that into 5 operational areas. We bid that competitively. Those records are out there, and we're actively working with FEMA to adjudicate eligibility for debris. So not every piece of debris will need to be removed, for instance, but something that could threaten the dam, something that could threaten the safety of drinking water, something that could jeopardize the reasonable safety of someone in that way, in that waterway. Those are things that we're examining now. And then similarly, we mission assigned the Tennessee Department of Transportation to expand their contracts and their mission to remove debris from the rights of way. That will end on the 2nd of March, but they have removed hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of debris that typically would have been the responsibility of local governments, and they would have borne the direct expenditures for those things. And we stepped forward to make sure that we were doing that for them. As an extraordinary measure, even Florida doesn't do that in the same way that we've done it, and we don't have hurricanes here typically. So those are just small examples there, and I think Alex probably has something to add in as well.
Just a little update on that number to give you perspective. As of last week, TDOT in that right of way had picked up 451,000 cubic yards of debris. That doesn't include the waterways. That doesn't include what we've talked about. We've looked at 5 different operational periods or operational areas outside of Douglas Lake, which is already done. We talked to Watauga, the French Broad, the Doe, Johnson County waterways, many more. I know I'm leaving some off, but the push, one of the things that I'm really proud to be a part of this team on is from the governor, from Director Sheehan, it was don't think about what's always been done. Don't think about what is in writing that you can do. We always did it legal, for the record. But making sure that the goal is to help people. And that is doing working with FEMA to get through some of this jurisdictional responsibility piece, because we are going over and beyond what states typically do. That is a piece that I think is very important in this. The actual, I'm going to go back to one of the questions with the dollars spent in each county. I don't have that compiled yet, because a lot of what we do is we pull in what TDOT's done. We pull in what the other agencies have done when we start to talk about this reimbursement. I can tell you that from the debris alone, the amount of money that has been allocated towards that in contracts is $450 million that we're looking at, whether it be the mission assignment or those waterways. And that does not include the TDOT piece. And that does not include the HEAL money. So hopefully that helps answer some of the questions that you had.
We do estimate that we have about $1.2 billion of what would be considered federally FEMA eligible, FEMA eligible damages. So that would be from the individual assistance side, debris removal, emergency protective measures, and then infrastructure replacement. That's an estimate. It has gone up, it has gone down, and we'll see what comes there. As far as FEMA's support, our federal coordinating officer who got assigned here and was here on the 28th of September was a longtime state emergency management employee in a Midwest state that I happened to have worked with at one point in time. He had been and assessed TEMA's program as a member of an accreditation program. They're doing a great job within their statutory authorities. I think our regional office out of Atlanta has done a great job of supporting us as well. Some of the headquarters staff, I think they spent too long admiring problems or the novelty of things that we were experiencing. That was sometimes frustrating. Sometimes they're constrained by the existing statutes. And, I'm sure everyone saw the news that there was discussions around reforming or getting rid of FEMA. I would hope the latter is not something that's actually on the table, but I'm a big advocate for replacing our nation's disaster recovery and response statutes, which is known as the Stafford Act. I think it's outdated. I advocated that as the president of the National Emergency Management Association and continue to advocate for replacing it. I don't think just amending it, it's a Frankenstein's monster. It's got too many bolt-ons at this point. It's unwieldy. It is not modern. So I would like to see that reformed. But everyone that has been engaged with us, and I'm sure the mayors would talk about this as well, all these FEMA counterparts that have been here have helped them navigate the difficult things that are in the statutes and in the regulations that we have to deal with.
A little bit, if I could add about FEMA as well, is through those multi-agency resource centers, over 14,500 valid registrations of people coming in to get help from federal aid. That ended up, as of the 22nd, being over $27 million in housing assistance or other needs assistance that has come in. and to follow back up on what we've done in the county, something that I think is really important is early on, we understood the magnitude of what this was. And Director Sheehan pushed us to get public assistance help as we talk about the long process it is, making sure the paperwork's done correctly, is to get people under contract that we can push out into the field and assist the mayors, the nonprofits, the faith-based organizations in putting those projects together where they could recoup as much as they possibly could from the beginning. And they stay on the ground. They're still on the ground today.
To Chairman Hill's point, they don't have this scale of disaster very often, less than once in a generation. And so that expertise of navigating the thorny bureaucracy, the administrative state, to access these programs, we wanted to make sure that we sent them people that could help guide them through it and assemble these documents in a way that would preserve their capital.
Thank you, Director. Leader Towns, new title.
Thank you very much. Testing. Gentlemen, thank you all for being here. Pardon my squinting. I would hate to, have to be in your shoes as it relates to visually intaking this every day for so long, because I know it has to really tug at your heartstring and your sense of humanity. It's very serious. And I know when Mother Nature strikes, no one can defeat Mother Nature. It's hard. It's very difficult, but we can make ourselves whole again a little bit at a time. With your agency, what I'm looking for is for us to anticipate some of this stuff because it's happening everywhere in the country. It's happening all over the world. I don't know what's going on, but I do know these natural disasters, from fires to storms to floods to all kinds of stuff, it's happening more frequently than when it was when I was a kid. And we are elected officials here, and sometimes, like lawyers, elected officials, and bureaucrats, we get in our own way. And what I'm interested in is seeing what you all have that we can change in terms of laws and policies that will allow us to expedite much quicker. 4 months, absolutely too long. 4 weeks when it comes to food and water, when it's cold and when it's freezing or it's burning up outside, human body can't stand that. We got to get some of this stuff constricted where we can move a lot faster. And you all on the inside, your policies and procedures. I don't know them totally. If it's something we need to do in terms of giving you all the permission and authority by changing laws or what have you, for instance, reimbursement, these mayors are telling you they need help reimbursement, they don't have the money. The well is dry. It's tapped dry. So if we need to reverse it, where if we know these are legitimate concerns and you all are vetted and you know these people are entitled to go and proceed, why not give them the money up front and hold them accountable? Because they're not going to be able to move if they don't have the money. They're not going to be able to move. Nothing can move without the money. We have to re-engineer this thing, and because it's not going to work, it'll be forever for them to be made whole. Now that's in East Tennessee. People from Memphis went up there. People from all over the state went up there. That could happen. It's happened in Nashville a few times. It can happen anywhere in the state. Okay, and it's our responsibility to do what is going to maybe one day, God forbid, it comes out our doors and our shores. We have to figure it out, and we can't play with it because people's lives are at stake, and some people can't take this pressure, and they go overboard. And God forbid that they made it through the storm, and then they go overboard, something else happens. So I need from you all some new ways of pursuing getting this paperwork out of the way, figure out what we need to do to make this thing legal, legitimate, but get that money. We got to get the money to the people in order for them to rectify the situation as quickly as we possibly can. So reimbursement, and I'd love for you to address what about we changed the reimbursement process and gave them the money up front.
Director.
I'm a proponent of doing things that speed up getting money there, sir. So I like a revolving loan fund that's even no interest as a way to get cash there and still have the ability to, I hate to say hold them accountable, but make sure that there's appropriate use of dollars, right? And there is a second issue, I think, too, is I think it will be harder and harder to get federal declarations for assistance in disasters. In your district, sir, I think 6 or 7 years ago now, we had tornadoes go through. I drove around and toured personally to see scores of brick houses bisected by 100 and 150-year-old oak trees. and we had no federal assistance for them. And we have no state program for that as well. So I think there were gaps that could be addressed, but I run an agency that is a creature of statute, sir. So it would be, I would look to the General Assembly to resolve that.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Leader.
this is what I'm looking for, okay? All right. I defer to you all as experts. We can do, but we need to know. You don't want us making laws that's going to hinder the process. I need some input
That is true.
from you all, okay, that will tell us specifically what to do. All right, you have an opportunity, you have a right to come in and get with your members or any of the members, the chairman, and say, look, this is what A, B, C, and D. If we did this right here, we can solve this problem right here. We can save this kind of money. We get to some people quicker. You all have to tell us. You all are the specialists in this particular deal. You all are the experts in this particular deal. Okay, but we're one team, but still there's certain plays that you all have to run. You got to run those plays, and you got to run us, and we have to figure out what we can do. But to do nothing is just unacceptable, and not to resolve the problem in quick order. Because, hey, man, I hate to say it, but it's going to happen again. I mean, that's just how nature's working. It's going to happen again, and we need to do something different. Another thing, I don't know, we may, the gentleman said they didn't have fire trucks. They didn't have hospitals. They didn't have schools. Fire trucks are very critical. So we may be able to do some other configurations, some other locales, and have some trucks staged there. We catch trucks on sale and buy them, and everybody can use them at some point in time. You know what I mean? They go around the state. We have to figure out another way of being able to address this stuff, because it breaks our heart, and we can't get back. Final question for you: how many people did this storm affect in that area up there? Total, all the people together, roughly, just a ballpark.
14,000.
14,000. Okay. And the rest of the state, because we all are looking and hurting.
I would say 14,000 directly, and then hundreds of thousands because of the transportation
Absolutely.
and water system impacts,
Absolutely.
the school impact.
But thank you for what you do. But I want you to think about seriously what I'm saying in terms of policy and things we may need to do as a General Assembly that you all can initiate and try to help make this thing go better. It's got to go better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Representative Bain, you're recognized.
I was about to say thank you, Mr. Speaker, but thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to pause and say thank you to all the county mayors that came today and spoke and gave testimony, because you all are the lifeblood of your communities, and state government should be robust and financially solvent enough to address your concerns and to ensure that you have the funding necessary to revitalize your communities. County Mayor Woodby mentioned in her testimony that there were obligated funds from FEMA. And last night, President Trump froze via request to OMB to freeze all funding until February 10th. And so I'm curious as to the interplay between FEMA, and this executive order. Thank you.
I'm not yet sure what the impact of that will be. So I know our council is looking at it, and I have a query out to FEMA on the impacts to funding now. But I can't answer what if any there are now.
Representative, any follow-ups? Okay, Leader Alexander, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted the opportunity to say thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You all were there every time I called. You answered every question I ever had. If you didn't know it, you said, I'll find it out. I'll call you back, Rebecca. And it was just a total life support for us. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done.
Leader Barrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for the information you're providing. I heard you say earlier 1.2 billion in FEMA qualifying damages. Is that the number?
That is the current estimate, yes, sir.
How much of what we heard from the county mayors of the damages that they have, the county roads, the county bridges, people out of work, how much of that is included in that 1.2 billion?
Most of that would be included, up to 75% federal reimbursement. So that's the other thing. Federal reimbursements, at least as it's currently awarded, is only 75% federal share. Typically, the state of Tennessee splits the cost share 12.5% and 12.5% with local governments. We have, I think, in some of the funding portions of the bills that are before this special session, proposing to shift that for Helene response to 20% state and 5% local for the non-federal portion of this year.
And again, I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician. What would the 5% obligation then be for the locals? I mean, obviously we heard that they don't have money. So even coming up with 5% sounds like it's going to be a difficult task for these local governments.
I would also point out in that 1.2 million, that includes the 600 million we're talking in debris removal that are a state piece as well. So I would be more than happy to go in and look at, we've had 107 what we call requests for public assistance so far. They have to do that to be eligible to do that. I would like to go back and look and then potentially send it back to this subcommittee for you to get a little more accurate numbers. So it's not as simple as 5% of 1.2 billion, if you will. And I don't want to understate it or overstate it, talking about the governments versus the nonprofits.
The reason I asked the question, and again, this is probably above your pay grade as far as making these decisions as to who we're going to pay what and what percentages we're going to divide this up as. But we just heard from 4 or 5 county mayors that are essentially telling us that their counties are bankrupt or going to be bankrupt as a result of this. So the state putting any obligation on them to pay some portion of this recovery seems asinine. We're asking them to do an impossible task, to pay something that they don't have the money to pay for. So I guess that's why I want to know what that number is, because I just like to know how high the obstacle is that we're putting in front of them. And then again, I don't mean to make light of this situation. It's very serious. What is the delay from getting those funds from FEMA? Why have we not received those funds already? Do we know? Have we already applied for them? What's the process?
No, I would be happy to go through that. So the first step in that is that request for public assistance that we talked about. They have to put projects together. The projects have to be reviewed. They have to be approved and obligated. So when funds are obligated, this is where a lot of, not misinformation, but confusion comes in. When it's obligated, it is not a $10 million check that's handed to the state of Tennessee. It's FEMA saying, we agree that $10 million is the cost of this. So at that point, the project holder, so if it was Carter County, did project XYZ, they would spend $10 million, the way the current system is, spend $10 million, submit their paperwork, submit it to us. Once it was verified from us, we would send 8.75 million back to them. And then the state would pull the money down from FEMA. So we don't wait in this process to get the money from FEMA. As soon as we have the verified documents and everything is approved, we push that money to them, and then we go back to FEMA to refill the coffer of which we push it forth.
Okay. So just one more comment, Chairman. Again, as I was saying, I don't mean to make light of this situation, but I wonder if these 9 counties that were affected were flying a Ukraine flag over their courthouse steps, if they would get this money faster from the federal government.
I can't speak to that.
Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Different pot of money, Representative Barrett. But what I'm hearing is the problem is they've got to spend the money first before you guys can reimburse them and pull it down from the feds. You know, unfortunately, I've lived through a flood. My area in 2010 had a flood. In my area alone, I had 2,497 FEMA recipient households. I'll never forget that number. At that time in 2010, FEMA could only give a household, you had a $500,000 home, it gets washed away, they could give you $29,900. Well, now they can give you $42,500, is that correct?
43, something like that, right around there.
So how many households have been given that?
115, I think, is the household max grant number of recipients.
Okay, how many people have applied for it? Do you know?
That would be the 14,000 number. people that have applied for housing, individual assistance?
Because I don't, it's been, like I said, 2010, I had a FEMA guy that I walked door to door to door, and they had checkbooks in some instances, or they were having it direct deposit in those people's accounts.
These funds have already been direct deposited into the
that night
accounts
at
of
midnight.
Tennesseans.
So, FEMA didn't seem to be any slowdown. Committee, what we're hearing though is we can give all this money and we're going to get all these roads and bridges and all that fixed. But as Representative Alexander said, you already had a $500,000 home or $300,000 home with a mortgage on it that doesn't exist anymore. They're going to rebuild it and they're going to get 42.5. That's where we need to be as a committee, looking to help these, however many households to go. And, I'm just looking here at the rainy day fund. We have $2.1 billion in the rainy day fund. If a flood's not a rainy day, somebody needs to explain to me why we have this fund. We're not looking to help these people hardly at all. And that's sad. I had an idea for an amendment earlier that, we ought to make tax-free all the building materials and appliances. What have these people been doing for 4 months? Like I said earlier, we've waited and waited and waited, till I guess he's got enough votes in line for other things to call this special session to help these people. But I'm concerned about these people who, after that day, they don't have any place to lay their head down. They don't have any place, they don't know where their next meal's coming from. And, it's kind of like the flood in 2010. I saw them, they were on the news talking about the Shimmerhorn Symphony Hall. I didn't really give two flips about the Symphony Hall and what they were going to do to repair it when I got 2,500 people without a home to live in. It's nice to build a bridge. It's nice to redo all these roads. We got to do that. But if you don't have a house to drive to on these roads or crossing that bridge, really doesn't make too much difference, folks. So we got $2.1 billion. I don't know what the amount would be feasible, to take out of that. 100 million, 200 million to help these people get roofs over their heads. These are Tennesseans. We've waited 4 months to help them, which is pathetic. And I think that's what we need to be looking for, and the monies, I don't know if we're not rebuilding these schools. We're giving just enough to build a third of these schools back. What were these counties that are bankrupt? They can't afford to build the other 2/3, take on the other 2/3 debt on these schools.
So
what are we doing here?
Director.
Sir, just as a point of clarification, sir, the schools would be eligible for public assistance as well.
Representative Mitchell.
They are to a certain extent. The flood down in Waverly, you may want to go talk to those folks down there and how much they're needing to fix their schools. They're not getting what they need. And the only way it's going to happen is us. I'm here this week. This is why I'm here. We need to help our fellow Tennesseans. And that's why we ought to be here this week. No other reason. But from what I'm seeing, this is a lot of good stuff we're doing. But these people don't have a roof over their head. Thanks.
Representative Jones, you're recognized.
I just want to thank Patrick and all your team, especially Michelle that was on the roof that day. Thank you for being there, and thank you for loving on our mayors and supporting them because they sure need it. So thank you, and I hope you continue to. I know you will continue to be there for them and help them navigate through this because it's going to be a long road. So thank you.
Chairman Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend the mayors for being here and the job that they have done, and let them know that we hear them, and that I encourage this General Assembly to do everything we can to support this community and the mayors and get them the help they need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I think we've just about exhausted the list, except now it's my turn. Director Sheehan, I want to personally thank you on behalf of the Third House District. You and your team were on the ground. You were there. You cared. As you were having to navigate, because a lot of the discussion of the committee is the appropriate discussion from my perspective, but you're having to navigate FEMA. You're having to navigate the emergency need, the emergent need. You're having to navigate logistics in a way that is very difficult to understand. And really gather how that can happen system-wide. And so I am grateful. I'm grateful that you and your team care the way you do about Northeast Tennessee, as you do, I'm sure, about the whole state. But one of the experiences that I had, and I won't name the counties because it's not relevant, it's more of a structural question to you. One county seemed to have quick access to TEMA and quick access to the services that were provided. I mean, within hours. And then a neighboring county didn't seem to see any type of direct activity for about 8 or 9 days. And I don't think that there were a lack of resources at TEMA. The perspective I think that I developed over a period in time was that the relationship with the EMA directors and TEMA itself can vary from county to county. Could you speak to that for a second? Am I looking at that appropriately?
I think there's accuracy to that. That is a part of it. Our county emergency management agencies are all 95 of them are done in a different way with different levels of capability, and some are volunteers, some are part-time, some have staff, some do not. And that leads to, I think, some variation in how they execute. Some counties have gone intentionally and had emergency operations centers constructed or space dedicated to be a place to convene people, to make decisions and to collaborate. Because the way we do things on a blue sky day like today, it's beautiful outside here in Middle Tennessee. The way we do things today when nothing's going wrong is different than when we need to convene an extraordinary number of partners. That's why emergency operations centers are so important. And they might seem wasteful. Like if you walk in, sometimes there's these dark, hulking rooms with all these screens. Like, why do they need all this? And it's because it's not built for those days. It is built for when the world is falling apart and people are suffering and you need to pull together subject matter experts. I think we would benefit from seeing more communities have spaces like that that are perhaps just a touch larger than they think is appropriate. And then, some counties have them, they've invested a lot in them, and their mayors have directed them, hey, we're going to have to replace, I want this place to get worn out over 25 years. So use it to bring people together all the time. And I think that's a healthy way to look at it too, is because we will fall back on our habits as well. And some places just are fortunate enough to have a little more resources than others, and they make some investment choices because they sometimes have the luxury of making those choices. And there's probably lots of room for discussion around how do we help standardize some of those capabilities and make sure that each community in Tennessee has a readier and more resilient community.
I thank you, Director. And again, I want to reiterate, and my question, we always want to be better, get better. But I saw you guys in action very much to the positive, very much in taking care of people who are in the greatest need. And committee, I don't want to misspeak, but it's still ongoing. This is not a done deal. It is ongoing. TEMA is still active. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, sir.
In the Northeast. And so my district has benefited greatly by the role of TEMA and how it's played, and tried to, again, from logistics all the way to interaction with the federal government, all the way to interaction on the daily, and in ways that I certainly am sure I don't understand. But we're very grateful. Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you as well for being here. I think quite a few of us actually got an opportunity to go to some of these different counties. With the work that I do outside of the legislature, we lost a couple of businesses that are located in these counties, but we lost a large amount of businesses in Asheville, North Carolina. And so a lot of the people that work for me really got the services that they needed really quickly, really fast on the North Carolina side, but our people on the Tennessee side didn't necessarily get them as fast. And as we're continuing to work through that, I know oftentimes we're able to say, "Oh, thank you so much. We appreciate the work that you've done." But looking back over it, do you think that there are any missteps that maybe you can say that you all are going to continue to work through? I know I was here a couple of years ago when we had the Weakley County situation, and we went out to Weakley County. But just over time, are there things that you may have noticed over the last few months that maybe we just need to improve on as a state, that we also need to consider as we're doing legislation moving forward?
We're always trying to find ways to be better, because just quite frankly, I think human perfection doesn't exist. It's an illusion. It's something that people talk about, but it doesn't exist. But we are in a constant, persistent striving for excellence, which I do think can be attained. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to have missteps, that we might miss something. I'd love to hear more about what program they had in North Carolina that they didn't have in Tennessee. It could be a state program that doesn't exist here. And so I'd love to know more about that, sir. But we're always trying to find ways to better serve Tennesseans and Tennessee communities before and after a disaster.
All right, and also with the 5% interest rate. So is there any way, I know we haven't gotten to that part yet, but before you all walk away, is there anything that we could do to take that part away? Or can you tell me what the 5% would be for, used for, that they are retaining for its interest rate?
Yeah.
So I want to separate just to make sure we're clear here. The 5% we talked about for federal reimbursement and this 5% are completely different, just to make sure. This loan interest payment was if the localities, counties, cities had to take out loans, that the state for a period of up to 36 months would pay up to 5% of that interest. So if they were able to get a loan for 5%, all they would pay for the first 3 years would be the principal on that loan. The state in this $110 million fund would cover interest on that loan, to where they were able to get access to the cash flow that the director was talking about, but also not take on the just continued debt, if you will. And that would, by having those loans, it would allow them to have the money up front to get the projects going, to get the reimbursement going.
Okay, Representative Renaud.
Thank you. To date, is there anyone in the areas that have been affected that are still shelterless? And if so, how many, or can you estimate how many people that, or homes that might be?
It's a difficult question, ma'am. So, because I've gotten some persistent things about people are intense. And so in a couple other counties, so I talk to the mayors every Friday. We have a meeting. Every other week's in person. And so I brought this up, like, listen, if we have people in tents, we need to open a shelter. We need to find some accommodations for them. My federal counterpart with FEMA, he and I were both kind of agitated that there could be someone out there. There were some that seemed to be reticent to register for FEMA assistance. I think we've overcome that by being patient and persistent and going, and ministering is not the right word, but just being accessible to them when they had questions, and to be patient as they, answered questions in their own head. But I know there are probably a handful of people that are still in tents or in sheds. That is a choice they are making at this point, ma'am. And I think we've exhausted every opportunity, reasonable effort to go and find people that might be in those conditions that would want to be elsewhere. And we've asked for and have a direct housing assistance mission with FEMA. So mobile housing units are being placed in different places. And, people aren't always going to be thrilled about where those things get placed because they'll go into easier areas like commercial housing parks and things like that. But the gist of it, ma'am, is no one that is unsheltered now who is not choosing to be unsheltered is my summation of the circumstances.
Thank you.
All right, members, we're going to go back into session. And yes, we had to replace the gavel because this one's broken already. We're going to roll number 2 without objection. Oh, there he is. Sorry, Chairman Faison. We're on number 2. Number 2 on the calendar, House Bill 6003. No. And that's, we need a motion second. All right. Representative, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. As you can tell today, it's a lot. It's a whole lot. So let me try to run through what these funds do and express exactly how these can really help these folks, especially our counties, man. They really need help. So the administration proposes immediate action to support recovery efforts and proactive preparation for future emergencies. Cleanup and recovery are happening now. Affected communities need access to funding sooner rather than later in order to make strategic financial decisions. House Bill 6003 establishes the Hurricane Helene Interest Payment Fund. We will be able to help local governments manage loans interest for the recovery cost. Local governments often rely on loans to cover upfront costs while waiting for federal reimbursements. Covering loans interest at 5% annually for 3 years reduces financial pressure and helps stabilize local finances, allowing the focus to remain on rebuilding and recovery. Without this assistance, local governments might face years of high interest payments, diverting resources, and other critical needs. The other part of the bill is creating the Governor's Response Recovery Fund, which can provide flexible financial resources for future emergencies. This fund offers flexibility to address diverse recovery demands, including but not limited to agricultural losses, employment assistance, and business recovery efforts without waiting for the federal process. Federal aid can take time to process. You know that, creating delays in rebuilding the restoration efforts. The loan fund allows the state to bridge gaps in funding, ensuring communities can begin recovery immediately after a disaster. Reliance on federal assistance can limit the state's ability to act decisively. This fund allows the states to take independent, strategic action tailored to Tennessee's specific needs. The fund operates as a revolving loan mechanism, ensuring that repaid funds can be reinvested into future recovery and preparedness efforts. Interest earnings may also be allocated to the Hurricane Helene Interest Payment Fund, amplifying its impact. You know, in Northeast Tennessee, we, since I've been in office, we've sort of been rumming around the idea of what would be our big ask, you know. Well, this devastation right here is probably going to wind up being one of our big asks. And the issue with this is, honestly, this is not a 40-yard dash. This is a huge marathon. it's going to take lots of time. This is not the first time that I will be at this podium about this disaster. This will not be the last. So I want to keep that in mind as we move forward. I believe that the governor has put together a great plan. It helps the needs of the county in a way that they can move forward and know with confidence on what they've got coming. The HILL program hit at a time when it was needed the most. And it actually worked great. It put the funds right directly where they needed it at the perfect time. So I believe this program is sufficient, and just ask the committee to move forward with it.
Without objection, we're going to go out of session. We're going to call up and thank you, Leader, for the explanation of the bill. I would like to call up the witnesses that we've got for a couple of questions. If the members have any questions regarding the legislation. Alex with TEMA, if you would go ahead and come on back up. And then is there somebody from the administration? We kind of have a little bit of paperwork. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Yeah, come on, have a seat. You can just introduce yourself and just if we'll start with TEMA, and then from the perspective, and then we'll go with the administration, and you guys know what to do. So take it away.
There we go. Okay. I've been in this room since they've started when the upgrade happened, so they work better now. Alex Pelham, Chief of Staff at TEMA. I think these two funds will provide, different things that are both needed. We know there's no silver bullet in recovery. There's no quick 40-yard dash, as was said in recovery. So, Representative Towns asked a question earlier. What have you learned? What missteps have you had? Where would you do it differently? I think what the governor's proposed and what we've been able to do allows us to do that differently. We were lucky that innovative leaders throughout the state looked at TennCare savings and were able to put that money towards the HILL program. 10 years from now, we might not be in that situation to where there's funding like this. This allows us the opportunity to think forward, to be able to move fast. We've heard a lot about potential federal red tape. This allows us to move fast. It also allows us to think a little outside of the box, so we're not dealing with, as Director Sheehan talked about, duplication of benefits. We want to make it easier for things to happen. And this interest loan piece allows money to get in the hands, and it allows them to not be burdened in the real time with paying that debt piece off in addition to interest, with the state providing a piece of that.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members. My name is Rob Mitchell. I serve as Deputy Counsel to Governor Bill Lee. What happened in Northeast Tennessee is heartbreaking, and we have been racking our brains on different ways that we can serve the Tennesseans up there in the Northeast part of the state. And so one of the products of all that thinking is this bill, HB 6003. And this bill would help county governments and Tennesseans in Northeast Tennessee in a couple of different ways, as well as provide a mechanism in the future where we could provide relief quicker to any county in Tennessee when a disaster strikes. So the first fund in this bill is the Hurricane Helene Interest Payment Fund, which would pay the locals' cost share of loan obligations that they take out or have already taken out up to 5% to try to ease that for the locals. We heard from these four mayors just heartbreaking stories of what's happening in those communities. Many of you know about that firsthand. And one of the many ways we're trying to help would be to pay their cost share obligations on interest for loans that they have taken or will take out for Hurricane Helene. And the other part of this bill, there's been some questions from different members about what we can do in the future and how we can be poised and prepared to respond more quickly. The second part would create the Governor's Response and Recovery Fund and would enable TEMA to have this money, this pot of money already on hand that it could quickly tailor in a sort of like customized or bespoke way to a disaster that strikes, whether that's a tornado or flooding or something else that is just tragic and takes us all by surprise. And so one of the things we thought about was how can we make sure we can respond even more quickly? And TEMA did a great job. Alex and Director Sheehan have been great, but we want to be able to respond even more quickly and have those funds on hand and be able to just help Tennesseans as quick as possible. And that was the idea that gave birth to this Governor's Response and Recovery Fund, which we'd like to put some money in. And that is the second part of this bill.
Representative Warner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Hill, and thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for being here. I mean, I've got to ask a question that my colleague asked, and I think we're shorting. We're shorting the great constituents of this state. Why has there not been a special session called already?
Yeah, thank you for that question. There's been a lot of work already done to address the hurricane, and hindsight's 2020. Hearing from you all, maybe that is what should have happened. That didn't stop us and TEMA from trying to help people in Upper East Tennessee, and from immediately seeing what we could do. But yeah, maybe hindsight is 2020. I'm not sure, but thankfully, TEMA, Alex, Director Sheehan have been quick to be able to help people and put boots on the ground. And we were able to come up with the HEAL program and inject, millions of dollars of funds into that area.
And if I could, I would note that we have done absolutely everything we are able to do at TEMA, and things that I will tell you, I've had calls from other state partners of ours, other states, other state directors, other state chiefs of staff, and said, "You guys are doing what? That's crazy." The amount of stuff, and it sounds like a joke, but the amount that has been taken on, even without the conversation about a special session, has been extraordinary and outside of any normal response that has taken place in the state to date, frankly.
And thank you. And I'm not doubting the job that you've done. I'm sure that you guys in the governor's office have been top notch. It's hard for me to understand with this much devastation. Why didn't the governor call a special session and get us in here? We were ready. We were expecting it, and it didn't come. That's all I'm saying. I'm not doubting the job. I know you guys are professional, and we greatly, as a body, and I know those folks appreciate it. But the question lingers, why?
Representative Hemmer, you're recognized.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Alex. I had one item in the bill. It says the TEMA may expend monies in the form of grants or loans to third parties. I was reading this, assuming this would be grants, be to cities and counties. What is the intent of third parties, and can you provide some examples of that?
My understanding, when we have talked about this, is that the grants or the loans, I don't think we wanted to limit the ability of what we were able to do, because we saw how successful HEAL was, that if that was the need, we would be able to do that or direct grants. My understanding and the way we put it together is that this would be made available to county or local governments. Also, the ability, when we talk about the agricultural, the unemployment piece, is that would be the third party piece we're talking. Let me give you a good example. When we talk about labor, we're talking about there are certain people that if you have not worked long enough to qualify for unemployment, whether it's the disaster unemployment or Tennessee unemployment, the envision of working with Commissioner Thomas is that this would be able to provide direct assistance to individuals that may have worked in the the industrial park that may not have worked long enough to qualify for any of these funds, that this would be a mechanism that we could act on very quickly and work to get money there.
Follow-up, thank you. Question for Mr. Mitchell. I was touched listening to the mayor's testimony earlier. He said they were looking for not a handout but a hand up. And hearing your testimony about the HEAL program and the $100 million loan that was given to the counties for the needs when they did, but I was concerned from my conversations with HHS officials, and that was this money doesn't have to be a loan; it can be a grant. So my question for you is, why has the administration decided to make these funds with strings on it?
Well, one of the things that's in the appropriations bill, as you all may know, is $240 million to help locals with their cost share obligations. So it is one of the things we're trying to address during the special session. It's just not in this bill.
It's kind of taken back by that because I thought the whole point of this special session was to deal with this bill and to deal with the needs that we have in the communities right now. So it seems very short-sighted, ill thought out, much like the whole special session we're here 4 months later after a hurricane, trying to deal with things in 3 days haphazardly. So I really don't appreciate that answer, and it seems like some more thought needs to go into this, and we need to be dealing with this now, this week. Thank you.
Chairman Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you talk a little bit about how the bill was crafted, who was involved, and how long it took?
Yeah. Let me make sure. This bill involved conversations between a number of different departments, and it was also based on some of the conversations that our staff in the governor's office and the governor himself had with county mayors and county executives in Northeast Tennessee. The governor was really interested in what can we do better? What can't we do right now? And what are things that we can do better next time? And so the previous bill that you all voted on, HB 6002, we had to suspend those Department of Labor and Workforce Development requirements through executive order. We'd had to do that a couple of times. And we thought it would be good to codify those so that next time we could get those unemployment claimants relief even more swiftly. Likewise, this bill is the product of some lessons learned in that, there's certain things that are not, for instance, FEMA reimbursable, maybe it's agricultural relief efforts or business relief assistance. And those are areas where we said, let's start a fund. We'll call it the Governor's Response and Recovery Fund, where when there's a disaster that strikes and it doesn't fit neatly into some of the FEMA reimbursable programs, we have money set aside for this day where we can deploy that money quickly. TEMA can get it out to the affected people, and we don't have to sit first and figure out, do we have the money? And if so, how can we inject it into the community?
Chairman Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What do you think as far as time frame it took to put it together?
Put together the bill?
Yes, sir.
Once we had the ideas put together, probably 48 hours. But obviously we had a lot of conversations that created the foundation of the bill, if that makes sense. So the actual legal mechanics of putting the bill together weren't long, but we wanted to hear from different people and say, I'm hearing this, wish we could do something about this. And I heard that, wish we could do something about that. And it was those conversations that led to the bill.
Chairman Russell.
So if I understand you right, you're saying it took a little while to make sure this bill was correctly written to bring to the legislature.
That's correct. Yeah. Thank you.
Chairman Russell.
And are you confident that this bill as written achieves what you're wanting to achieve?
Yes. Yes, we are. Yeah. Yeah. We've had conversations both obviously before writing the bill and after, and lots of discussions. And we are very confident that it achieves what we want to achieve and places Tennessee in a better spot than it was prior to this.
Chairman Russell.
Well, thank you for your work you've done, and look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative McKenzie, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I know everyone's worked hard on this, but this is unacceptable in terms of this much delay. There's no good reason for it. And I've heard several members ask pretty much the same question, and I've just not gotten a good answer for it. I mean, like you talk about 48 hours to develop. Did it take the other 3.5 months to study it? No. There was an obvious delay in what we can do. I'm not talking about TEMA. I'm not talking that they were their boots on the ground, but there was a delay in what we can do. And I think that's flushing itself out in this dialogue and this conversation. But you know, and I'm never one to bash without a consideration of a solution. I heard the director talking about, and I get it. I agree with it. Everything starts at the lowest level. Yeah, it's the road superintendent. It's the local PD, the local fire department. Absolutely, because a lot of our conditions, you know, we've had straight line winds in Knox County, but that's a Knox County issue. But maybe as a suggestion, if this crosses county lines, we're talking about 4, 5, 6 counties. We've got to start immediately. We can't wait 4 months while we figure out that, hey, this is beyond our local control. And there has to be a playbook. If you didn't have one, shame on us. But we need to demand that next time, and there will be a next time, as Representative Towns said, I hate it. It might be a flood, it might be a tornado, it may be a ice, it may be, you know, whatever. But there will be a next time in our great state of Tennessee. We have to, you all know that. So for us to sit here and say, we're going to be happy with coming back 4 months later, the next time, this 114 General Assembly will be indicted for that. This is horrific what happened in those counties. I've officiated a football game at Hampton High School. Was a great school, and it's no more. We can't say 4 months later, okay, now we're going to give you this much money for whatever reason. And I hope there's nothing nefarious in it. I really do hope there's nothing nefarious. But this can't happen again. So with that said, you know, it's small, but as I heard the county mayors talking and knowing what I know about how the help came from nationwide, but a lot of Southern help. Would you consider, and this maybe is to TEMA, because there's a lot of churches, a lot of faith-based organizations, a lot of nonprofits that really kind of wanted to help. But when you're talking about 4, 5, 6 counties, that's hard. Maybe it'd be a good idea to kind of create this, again, it's going to happen, some kind of team, maybe focusing it around this particular event, because it's not over. There's still a lot to do, to try to create a recovery team of kind of the softer side of dealing with the human aspects. As you sat here and saw the mayor of Unicor County, you can't, it's mental. It has to be mental. There has to be some mental health effects coming of that. There has to be some physical health aspect of people are still living in tents, intentionally. They're intentionally living in tents, living on the street. That's a mental health issue. So again, let's deal with it. Let's acknowledge that it's happened and that we made some mistakes. But even now, let's try to build for the next time. And maybe putting together this team would help in doing that and help prepare you for how to respond to both the hard roads and bridges side, the homes and the farm side, but also on that I'd say softer side, but it's really the essential side of that mental health of our citizens that were just devastated in the 6-hour period. How would you respond to that?
I think that's a worthwhile suggestion and a suggestion worth taking into consideration. And I think we'll surely have discussions about that and how to proceed forward. I don't know if Tima has anything to add.
I can tell you, I don't know if your microphone works, but one of the things that the General Assembly, approved the budget, and we got positions in the last fiscal year, and 3 of those positions one of them is Austin Travis, who is our external relations, who each of you were in touch with. The other was someone named Kate Amaral. She is our private nonprofit coordination, which you saw come to a head with Bristol and the amount of help working with some of our non-traditional partners. Another position that we're in the process of getting ready to hire that just got established, we had to reestablish a certain part of it in HR, is a faith-based outreach. Its sole purpose is to work with our faith-based organizations throughout the state to be better prepared, not only from a safety standpoint, from a planning standpoint, but also preparing to recover. Because we know that public assistance availability for faith-based organizations came 3 years ago.
4 years ago.
4 years ago. It's been a long 4 years or a quick 4 years. And so being able to prepare our folks, prepare our organizations that provide such a huge amount of relief in this part of the state and will throughout the rest of the state is something that's on our mind. It is something that we've already started moving forward with. And I cannot imagine, and she's probably blushing somewhere, without Kate Amaral and what she did with the private and nonprofits in that communities, it would not have been as successful as it was up there getting goods out. And that is a lot of the forethought of Director Sheehan, and thankful for the governor's office and the assembly for passing that and letting us have that opportunity.
So we did convene with partners there, these what we call VOADs, voluntary organizations active in disaster. And so the Food Bank of Upper East Tennessee, and I'm botching their name right now, but they hosted us there. Thank you, ma'am. Second Harvest Food Bank of Upper East, provided a space for us. And we convened scores of organizations there that are engaged in long-term recovery, to include feeding and mental health, rebuilding of homes. And then in each of these communities, we're supporting the establishment of long-term recovery groups. That's a FEMA term of art, emergency management term of art, around pulling together both government partners and community leaders to support these long-term recovery initiatives. So we're being very active in helping establish those things, provide them tools where they think they need them. We did a lot, again, going back to the wildfire with Mountain Tough, standing up a long-term recovery committee there. And we're looking to try to make sure that each of these communities has something similar where they can look after the long-term needs. Not all of them will be met by government programs, but long-term needs that can be met by community-based organizations, by national nonprofits. And we take your point seriously, sir, and we're working on that. And another reason for the faith-based office is also, churches are now eligible for about 5 years. They've been eligible 4 or 5 years for public assistance when their structures are damaged. And that means they've had to do bookkeeping in a way that I would say most houses of worship in America do not. So the amount of transparency and clarity they would need to have is something I think most of them were not accustomed to. And so we're working to proactively work with faith organizations across Tennessee to get them readier to receive help.
Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Thank you.
Representative Towns passes. Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tima, y'all have done all you can do, all you had the resources to do. Sitting here looking at an article. This flood, September 27th. Reading an article here. General Assembly of North Carolina passes $273 million Helene relief bill. October 9th. October 9th. 11 days. It took North Carolina 11 days. Tennessee has a budget of $56 billion. North Carolina has a budget of $33 billion. Somehow they're finding more in 11 days than this governor can find in 4 months. Maybe he's got other things to spend money on other than putting people back in houses that lost it in a flood. Maybe he's got something else to squander money on that we're here for. This is shameful. 11 days. They've come back 2 more rounds. 2 more rounds of funding in North Carolina. I bet this part of Tennessee wishes they were still part of North Carolina. It's ridiculous. He should resign. There is no sense in these people waiting 4 months for this. $273 million in 11 days, and 4 months, and we can't even match that. I'm sorry to the residents of your counties. It's disgraceful, and hopefully we will do more than what's been proposed for your counties. Thank you.
Representative Renault, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is probably a freshman question, but if you could just help me understand this. On the Governor Response Recovery Fund, the $100 million that's proposed for that, is the intention for that to be spent in these counties immediately? And if so, how will that money be replenished next year? Or is the intention to just use the federal funds or other things that might come later to replenish that fund?
So the money certainly can be used for Hurricane Helene relief or for other future disasters that are unforeseen. I guess it'll depend some on what outreach there is to TEMA, what the need is, the conversations that are ongoing with the county mayors and county executives, but there is no barrier to that $100 million being used for Helene.
Okay. Thank you.
Chairman Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I listened to this today and in the special session that's been brought before us, we have to look back, and we're all Tennesseans. I mean, our border is Tennesseans. We care what happens to Tennesseans. My association sent money to East Tennessee Red Cross. I mean, so we are all in this thing together. I look over this bill, this House Bill 6003. And I think you guys have done a good job putting it together and making that cornerstone for the future and making it work today. Our job now is today forward. Where do we go now until then? Let's don't look at the past. Let's look what we're going to do today and help the people in East Tennessee, help the people that's going to have that disaster down the road. I mean, we've sat there, if you're my age, you've seen disaster after disaster after disaster in the state of Tennessee. So, I think the cornerstone that we're going to build today and with a special session is going to be a positive from here on out. And I'm glad to be a part of it. So I thank you guys for coming, and thanks, TEMA, for what you guys have already done and already spent, of the taxpayers' money to help taxpayers, to help Tennesseans. So I appreciate you guys, and look forward in voting for this and in going into the future. Thank you.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the bill. As I read through it earlier today, my mind went back to 14 years ago when a horrible tornado ripped through my district, Bradley County, and killed 9 people, hundreds of millions of dollars in damage, and you can still see the scars today. But I thought about the mayor, who's a friend of mine, and the county commissioners. They would have loved to have had a bill like this. They would have loved to have had this resource. In fact, I can remember when there was discussion being made back then about we need to generate some kind of fund. We've finally done that, and I do appreciate that, because as others have said, it'll happen again. And several things I like about the bill is the flexibility, whether grants or loans, and you have the ability to make those decisions. I like the flexibility. I like the annual reporting, because the legislature keeps eyes on what's going on. But I do have a couple of questions about the fund. 2 different funds are being created. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the first one, the interest payment fund, is that a sunset fund?
I don't think so. I don't think it was provided that it sunsets. So no, I don't believe so.
Okay.
But of course, the purpose is for Helene.
Okay. Well, I may be misinformed. The way I read it, I thought it sunset in end of December in 25. I just wanted to clarify that. If you want to check on that and get back with me,
Yeah, let me get back to you on that.
fine.
Thank you.
But I don't want to have a misinformation on that. The second fund, the Response Recovery Fund, that's in perpetuity, and it perpetuates itself. How does that funding work?
So there'd be, right now in the appropriations bill, the idea would be there'd be an initial 100 million that goes in there that can be used to, again, be customized to different disasters that come. But if, for instance, at some future disaster, what was customized was a loan, and, maybe it was a zero interest loan or something like that, and then the money came back, the money would go back into the fund and be available for a future
Okay,
disaster.
Okay, I understand. All right, thank you for the bill. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Representative Bain, recognized.
Thank you, Thank you, Chairman. 2 questions for the governor's office. One is, could you provide some insight as to why 10 Care was rated and not the general fund for those funds? And then 2, why they're not direct cash transfers rather than, or they are loans rather than direct transfers?
Yeah, so a couple things. I am not on the finance and administration team, so I can't tell you too much, but I know that 10 Care was involved in conversations and they just happened to have the money, and it was kind of a happenstance. Here's the time, and this is how we can get those 10 Care funds out quickly right now. And we were fortunate that those funds were there and available for use, but that's one of the realizations that led to creating this new fund, is that may not always be the case. There may not always be that money with 10 Care or any other department or elsewhere in the state. And so we should have a fund set up where that money is always available. So that's what gave idea to that fund. And then was the second part of your question, if I remember correctly, why it was loans and not just given. There's a couple reasons. One is some of this money will be matched, a large portion of it, I think 75%, by FEMA. And FEMA requires really extensive record keeping. And so it'll be more consistent with FEMA if everyone is keeping the same records and providing the same documentation of their money and everything back to the state.
May I add something as well? We also didn't want to create conditions that would be a duplication of benefit. So where we would take state money essentially and pay for something that would be reimbursable by FEMA.
Understood. Thank you. No further questions.
Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
I'll make a motion to go back in session.
All right, without objection. Representative Warner, you're recognized.
Question on the bill.
Representative, if you would withdraw that, please.
Yes,
We've
yes,
got a
sir.
couple other
Mr.
questions.
Chairman, I'm more than glad to.
Okay. Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to say thank y'all. I know you guys took it on the chin. I talked to the chairman once or twice over there. I talked to Hicks multiple times, took it on the chin, and your constituents are lucky to have y'all. Y'all, every time I talked to Hicks, you could tell in his voice that he was feeling it. Had some guys come over there, had a picture of you with a shovel in your hand. Yeah, your folks ought to be grateful. So sorry to interrupt there, Warner.
So I have a quick question. Do we have anybody else that's up? But I have a quick question on the sponsor, and I would have asked of the folks that were up, but I'm concerned that the second fund that we're creating is providing future relief for future disasters when our people are literally hurting, minute by minute, hour by hour. And I know that's not the intent of the sponsor. The sponsor is carrying great legislation as a whole. And it is my hope, because I was hoping that I would get to see some folks from the administration. But it's my hope as we pass this bill out of this committee that we can find a way, either in this special session or as we move into regular session next week, but that we can find a way to not create a loan or create a fund or create a displacement fund or a victim fund or whatever it is that we want to call it, and get direct assistance to the people that we serve and direct assistance for the float money that our counties desperately need. I mean, they sat here and they said that very exact thing. And I think that there has to be a way where we can work with reversion, where we can work with TennCare, which is a point of personal privilege. I believe that the administration and the work with the HEAL loans was innovative. They took money from legislation that I had the privilege of passing years ago as an old legislator now with the Medicaid block grant, and found a way to serve people that needed it the most. That is innovative, absolutely innovative, to help the people that need it the most. And in Northeast Tennessee benefited from that move. But we've got to, even in passing this legislation, we've got to take it a step further and see where we can help those counties directly and also help individuals from a direct perspective. And so, members, any other comments, questions? Representative Barrett.
Thank you. And Mr. Sponsor, I was going to ask this while we were out of session, so I apologize for asking it of you. And as I understand it, I think the chairman just referenced that the funding for this relief package is coming from reversions. Is that correct?
The funding for this relief package, especially the $100 million, comes from several different avenues. It can actually come from federal government. It can come from loans paying back. It can come, the General Assembly can appropriate money to this. So I think this fund is sort of set up to where it'll work in the future for Helene, okay, and then work in the future for other disasters that we may have. I think that's the purpose of this.
Representative Barrett.
Well, as I understand it, and again, I'm just trying to make sure that we're all aware kind of where this money is coming from. But as I understand it, we've got a fiscal note that says we're creating $210 million in expenditures in 25-26 from the general fund. But that money is not new money. It's coming from reversions, meaning we're shaking the couch cushions from all the different departments to come up with this little bit of money. And this is money that they did not spend, so now we can redirect it to this fund. Is that correct?
I don't know that for certain.
Okay. Well, assuming that it is correct, because that's what finance told me, we didn't spend $144 million on the vouchers that we put in the budget last year. Why isn't that in here too?
Leader, you recognize.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a totally different road that you're going to have to go down. I'll be happy to go down it, but I believe I would probably take that somewhere else, sir, Chairman. Yeah.
Understood, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Can I say something, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Leader.
Something that needs to be said here is a couple of years ago, we passed the Transportation Modernization Act. If we would not have done that, we would have been in session in 3 days. Okay? Folks don't understand what that bill did. It turned Tennessee loose. They was boots on the ground within hours in a helicopter doing flyovers. It's unbelievable what we did a progressive design build phase of that. And I mean, we had estimates and completion dates within 2 weeks of the disaster. So it's extremely important of what that legislation, what we passed right there, because we would have been back in a special session really quick. And the good thing is living in a conservative state, we had the money set aside to be able to fit the money forward in order to not wait on the federal government to get our funds to do our work. So we've got bridges that typically, and roads too, that typically take 2 to 3 years to do, that is going to be done in June, finished, completely finished. So that's an important piece of this that needs to be talked about because it was extremely important in a disaster like this. I never dreamed in a million years when I supported that bill that we would be using that in Northeast Tennessee for the very first time. I never dreamed that, but thank God we had it.
All right, members, we're ready to vote. We're going to Representative Mitchell. We have the amendments. Okay, just kidding. It's been, hey, I'm a little rusty on my chairmanship there. All right. We need motion second on Amendment 1. Okay, I move to withdraw Amendment number 1. Amendment number 2 by McKenzie. The motion is second. The amendment was timely filed. And Representative, if you would explain your amendment. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a really simple amendment, but I think it goes to do a lot as we've heard today about devastation, about people that have been displaced for long periods of time, as they build back, as they build their projects back, and as we expend money to help them. We have a lot of great folks in that area. We got a lot of great folks coming from outside that area, but not everyone coming in to help is going to be helpful. And what this amendment does is just make sure that the folks building the properties back build to code. That they don't come in with shoddy buildings and shoddy homes, shoddy roofs, that they build these facilities when we're using our state dollars to code. So that's what that bill does. This amendment does in a nutshell. Ask for your consideration.
Members, any questions of the sponsor? All right, Representative Renaud, beat you to the punch, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are not building codes already required by law?
Sponsor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, but I don't know if the current building code is going to be the law of the land. I think that may not be a statewide mandate. So there could be building to a 1986 code for fire protection, something like that. So again, it can be a question. I can bring that to legal. But as I did my inquiry on this, there's not one code that will be mandated across the line for these funds.
Representative Warner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the sponsors, bill here. I think we have counties across the state that some counties do not have building codes.
That's correct.
So why would we put a burden on those counties that don't have those codes?
Sponsor, you're recognized.
Thank you. Because of that, you may not get the properly built facility. As the topography in that area, if there's no standard, then what are we building to? And when we're talking about, this is not our personal money. These are taxpayer dollars. So I think we all want to get a bang for our buck in terms of having a house that's going to withstand, not necessarily this, but could withstand more. So if you're not building to any standard, any code, to your point, what are we going to end up with? These are millions of dollars of our taxpayer dollars that we're putting forward. And I think that's not a small or a nebulous thing to ask for. It's just that there be a standard that it be built to.
Members, I think I'm next on the list. Sponsor, I appreciate the intent in which you bring the amendment to the legislation that's in front of us. But members, I would urge a no vote for the following reason. My district has been through a lot. My district knows how to build buildings. My district, it would be superseded by state law. And their wishes, and in this instance, favoring local control is important. We want people to be safe. The buildings are going to be built safe. They're going to be built to standards, especially if they're built with state or federal dollars. And so with respect and with appreciation for caring for our district and caring for how things are built, I would humbly request a no vote. And Representative Alexander.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I know from my own county, our building codes have stayed the same. We have released permit costs so that they don't have to pay permit costs to get those permits to build, but they can't even begin to even think about putting a house back until it's inspected by the group that inspects our for septic systems and sewer systems. And so the building codes are in place. They have to, if they have an electrician in, they've got to get an electrical permit. So it's working really well in our area.
Sponsor, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that comment. And I agree wholeheartedly. So in your case, there'll be nothing, there'll be no harm done with this particular amendment because you all have the infrastructure in place. But as a previous questioner said, not everyone is there. Not everyone is where your particular county or your municipality is. So it would just give us a standard of understanding. And to the chair's comments, it's also not everyone's going to be building from your neighborhood. You're going to get some outside entities. There's a lot of money coming in. Everybody's looking at all these zeros that are coming into these counties, and you're going to get some nefarious and bad actors coming in as well. And I would just hate for these folks who have been through so much and they got their dream house rebuilt or repaired. 2 to 3 years later, they're having major issues because we didn't set a floor, that we didn't set a floor that they could be built to. So that's again, my reason for bringing this amendment.
The question on the amendment's been called, and the electronic items, at least on day one in this room, require us to do a roll call vote. And it reminds Leader Towns of days gone by. So if the clerk will call the roll, and if you're in favor of the amendment, vote aye, and adding to the bill, if not, vote no. Clerk, take a vote.
It turned mine off. Red light.
Representative Alexander votes no. Ashley? No. Ashley votes no. Barrett? No. Barrett votes no. Ben? Aye. Ben votes aye. Burkhart? Burkhart votes no. Darby? No. Darby votes no. Harris? Yes. Harris votes aye. Hemmer? Aye. Hemmer votes aye. Howell? No. Howell votes no. Hurt? No. Hurt votes no. Jones of Unicoi? No. Jones votes no. Kiesling? Kiesling? Present, all voting. McKenzie? Aye. McKenzie votes aye. Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell votes aye. Moon?
No.
Moon votes no. Pearson? Powell? Renew? No. Renew votes no. Russell?
No.
Russell votes no. Scarborough? No. Scarborough votes no. Stinnett?
No.
Stinnett votes no. Towns?
No.
Towns
Aye.
votes.
Sorry, aye.
Town votes aye. Travis?
No.
Travis votes no. Warner?
No.
Warner votes no. Vice Chairman Holsey?
No.
Holsey votes no. And Chairman Hill?
No.
Chairman Hill votes no. Mr. Chairman, you have 6 ayes, 17 noes, and one present not voting.
Amendment fails. All right. Amendment number 3. Members, amendment number 3002466 is actually untimely filed. Representative, you recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I would have loved to file it timely if this committee was actually included in my office list of things to file it timely. That's why I finally just brought it up there to your office by hand. But, if you want to still rule it untimely, that's fine. But would I get 2 minutes to present it, 1 minute?
I don't think so. It's always great to have you visit the office, but I don't think so. I don't think the rules allow for an untimely filed. Let's ask clerk. I guess.
Well, LIS had to come to my office to add this committee to the list of things my secretary could actually submit an amendment to. And I've got a picture of the screen if you'd like to see that, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, 2-minute recess. Back in session, members, the best that we can ascertain, Amendment 3, 002466, there may have been a technical glitch and maybe something similar to what we were experiencing with some of the voting mechanisms. So Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this amendment does
We have a
is.
motion and a second.
Oh, sorry.
We have a motion and a second. You're recognized.
Out of practice, sorry. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what this does is create the Volunteer Neighbor Assistance Fund. And what it will do is it will take $50 million from the Revenue Fluctuation Reserve and set up a fund where individuals who have lost their homes can apply for $10,000 grants, not loans, grants to ease their recovery. So, that's up to 5,000 different grants we have for these people who've lost their homes up there, to go on top of the 42.5 that FEMA's giving them. It still won't make them whole, but we'll be making an effort to get them farther than being offered by the administration right now. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Members, Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move this amendment to the table.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving it to the table, would you like to speak? I'd like for you to speak.
Oh, I'd
Go
like to speak.
ahead, Representative Mitchell. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah. More than happy to move to a table. Like I said, we got $2.1 billion in the rainy day fund. And if a flood isn't a rainy day, I don't know what is. We're doing nothing to help these people who've lost their homes. Like I said, you can build them a road and build them a bridge to go back to where their home used to exist, or we can do something to help these people. So if we all feel good about not helping those people, that's fine. But I'm up here this week to help those people who lost their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. All those in favor of the tabling motion, say aye. Opposed, no. No. Ayes have it. That is that's not a final action. All right, we're back on the bill. We have a question on the bill. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Representative Alexander.
Vote, members for clarifications. Members for clarification, we are voting on the bill in its final form. Madam Clerk.
Representative Alexander. Alexander votes aye. Representative Ashley. Ashley votes aye. Barrett. Barrett votes aye. Ben. Ben votes aye. Burkhardt. Burkhardt votes aye. Darby. Darby votes aye. Harris. Hemmer. Hemmer votes aye. Howell. Howell. Howell votes aye. Hurt. Hurt votes aye. Jones of Unicoi. Jones votes aye. Kiesling. Kiesling. McKenzie. McKenzie votes aye. Mitchell. Mitchell votes aye. Moon. Moon votes aye. Pearson. Powell. Renault. Renault votes aye. Russell. Russell votes aye. Scarborough. Scarborough votes aye. Stinnett. Stinnett votes aye. Towns. Towns. Towns present, not voting. Travis. Travis votes aye. Warner. Warner votes aye. Vice Chairman Holsey. Present, not voting. Chairman Hill? Aye. Harris, you'd like to change your vote? Make a vote? Aye. So he was Harris, right? Mr. Chairman, you have 20 ayes.
All right, bill passes on to government operations. All right, we're on to item number 3, the final number on the calendar, House Bill 6007 by Chairman Faison. We have a motion properly second, and Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Committee, Mr. Chair and Committee. It's been a minute since I've been up here. Never been in front of this committee in my 15 years. It's a new committee for me. I'm not used to it. Before I get started, I just want to make mention, there are those of you on this committee who called, who gave money, who literally handed me cash. I was thinking of my little friend, Mrs. Afton Bain. She showed up in my district. This storm, we saw the very toughest that humanity faces, and we saw the very best and what humanity has to offer. And I, for one, am eternally grateful. Even my friend, Representative Mitchell, he called me and gave me some ideas of reaching out to Home Depot. When he called me and gave me ideas the next day about reaching out to Home Depot, I reached out to Home Depot through a number he gave me, and it was amazing what Home Depot, they showed up with 6 tractor trailers. It was to be able to see such carnage and death and hurt, and then see love come in from people on all sides of the aisle, whether it was Republican or Democrat. It was a beautiful thing. And I just, especially from Todd Warner over to all of you who called, who gave cash, who gave money. And I'll tell you this, those of you who actually handed me cash and said, Jeremy, find people who need this. There were times that I handed somebody a $100 bill or $500 or whatever I had the ability to give at that time from what y'all had given. And I saw people weep. I saw people just fall apart because they're literally have lost everything. It was amazing. I'd also like to give a shout out to the military and to, I guess, my friend Patrick, my mayor, Rob Mathis, my EMA director, Joe Esway, and our friend Patrick Sheehan are all military men. I was so impressed with the ability that they had to lead under immense amount of pressure. When this was going on, there were people who were missing. There were people who were stranded. There were people who were in the middle of an island somewhere that we didn't know were an island. There were people who own houses that are being literally washed down the river. And I watched my mayor and our EMA director and TEMA show up and TWRA show up and EMA directors from all over Tennessee. It was, guys, it was a beautiful thing to watch Tennessee come together. And just wanted to give a shout out to that. I would also like to answer this notion that North Carolina got us and had several special sessions. Can I just tell you that there is nobody in North Carolina who appreciates their special sessions. Tennessee has been far better taken care of. Every one of us that live anywhere near North Carolina are so grateful we live in North Carolina because our state, our people showed up like you can't imagine. I had the awesome privilege, responsibility, however you want to say, of flying into North Carolina to places you couldn't get to from a car. I watched how they were inept at taking care of their people. My church, Crossroad Community Church, did far more for Western North Carolina during the first month and a half than North Carolina ever thought about doing. So I don't care if they had 3 sessions or 5 sessions. They failed, and my state didn't. We showed up, our people showed up, and we did the job. It was beautiful. I just wanted to make sure we understood how good our state did compared to the people that I know and have been with and have cried with and have helped them with mayors in little communities all throughout North Carolina. We got it better, regardless if we had a special session or not. So September 27th was a day that was something you're never going to forget. We watched the rivers rising It was baffling to see a Walmart delivery truck going down the middle of my river. I mean, this is crazy. That happened September 27th, Friday. The next morning, I went to our central command, and Macy Reed is our property assessor, and I think she's watching right now. She looked at me, and her boyfriend is our EMA director, Joe Esway. She said, "Jeremy, have you seen the damage?" And I live only a half a mile off the Pigeon River, so I'd already seen what was happening. She said, "Jeremy, I don't know if you realize this, but February 28th, your property tax comes due." And she says, you and I have constituents in this county who no longer have a house. She said, "Jeremy, I was with my husband early this morning, and there are places you can't even tell where a house stood. It's a pile of rocks now. And regardless, their property tax is due come February 28th. So I immediately reached out to the comptroller. What can we do? Well, our Constitution does not allow us to do property tax relief. By this time, we're hearing from all of us. Rebecca's calling, Renee's calling, Tim Hicks calling. We're like, guys, what can we do? And I'll say this, I've heard a lot of good chatter going on today. And this, maybe you'll disagree with this, but it's not government's job to make you whole. I would like to think that in every circumstance, we can make our people whole, we can make our businesses whole, but you know and I know that that's not reality. There's not enough money to make everybody whole. But I think that if we can't make you whole, what can we do to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and say, first of all, we understand you're hurting. We are going to do everything we can to get our roads built. And we are going to help where we can without overburdening the rest of the state or putting us and our posterity, our children, in some kind of financial burden that they can't handle. So all of us in East Tennessee, we've worked with the comptroller, we worked with our attorney general to make sure there's something we can do to help them. My bill is really simple, guys. It just says, if you have property in East Tennessee that was destroyed or hurt during Hurricane Helene, your property taxes for the year 2024, we will take care of that for you in a grant process. We will allow you to apply for a grant process. You apply through the comptroller of the Treasury. He already has through all of your local property assessors. They have identified every piece of property that's been destroyed or hurt or damaged. They know what your property tax is. They've created a form for you to be able to get a grant so that we will help you with that. We will also give you an additional 30% if the federal government decides that they are going to tax that portion of your property tax that we're going to do. That's the first part of the bill. It's just very simple. It's not a huge deal. And it might only be $400 or $500 for some people. It might be $1,000 for some. But here's the deal. It's something that helps them, especially for those who are not even living in their property right now. And then the last part of the bill, we found out, and you might have seen this, the law in Tennessee is a little bit ambiguous when it comes to sharing resources that you happen to have. My city, if you lived in this, you saw an overwhelming amount of trash and trying to learn to deal with trash. There was questions whether or not the city of Newport could use their trash trucks and their employees to go help pick up trash in the county. I worked with the comptroller. There's a possibility there could be a ding on that. So in effort, just in good faith effort to make sure moving forward, if we're ever in an emergency situation, again, God forbid that we are. I don't want us to ever be in that. But if we are, that we know that we can have shared resources throughout all of our abilities for our county or our city. Whatever assets they have, we ought to be able to share it with each other. For counties next to you or city or county, whatever is right there, when you're in the middle of emergency, you ought to be able to work with each other, share gravel. I mean, we were trying to get roads built across areas that were flooded out so we could get to people. I mean, it was crazy. So I just want to make sure whatever we do, we've got it legal, our people can share, and that's all this bill does. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Chairman.
And there's an amendment.
We've got an amendment
Yes.
002383 And is there a motion on the amendment? We have a motion second.
Do you want me
properly
to explain the
second.
amendment to you? Thank you.
Feel free.
For the people who are going to apply, their property, their business, their house, they're going to apply to be able to get this tax grant. What this does is we have, obviously, you might even have multiple people on your property title. This basically says the first person to apply. If there's multiple owners, it's impossible for us to figure out who goes to what first. So that if there's multiple people on that, we're saying whoever the first person to apply, that's the best way for the comptroller to send. This is the person who's the primary responsible one to pay the taxes on this property. And so that's what this amendment does.
Okay, all those in favor of adding the amendment 002383 to the bill, signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Back on the bill. Question on the bill. Although, Madam Clerk, have an objection? Have an objection? Chairman Travis, would you withdraw that motion? That was very generous of you, sir. Okay.
Aren't y'all tired of this?
We don't want it to end. Representative Barrett, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm lit up now here. Chairman, a couple of questions. First comment, Section 2 of this is absolutely necessary, being able to provide mutual aid to neighboring communities. That's obviously what we do with the electric companies and whatnot whenever something like this happens. So it's very vital. Great part. On the first part of this bill, I've got a couple of concerns. One, and let me make sure I reference the part here. In Section 1, paragraph B1A, top of the second page of the bill, was destroyed or damaged by a qualified disaster. What level of damage constitutes the ability to get paid under this? Is there a cap, a limit? Is it $500? Is it $5,000? What amount of damage allows you to get paid under this?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is if you've had any damage to your property at all that resulted from Hurricane Helene.
Okay. That's troubling to me. I mean, and I get where you're going, what you're trying to do with this, but if somebody just has a couple of pieces of siding knocked off their house, I'm not sure that it would justify us paying them all of their property taxes plus 30%. That's the way this reads to me. Secondly, is this before or after the property is specially assessed to reassess the property? Because the owners are still going to own the real estate. So if a house is completely wiped away, are they getting the assessment of the amount that they are going to be assessed based on if the house was there? Or are we going to require the assessor of property to go in, reassess the property without the improvements, but because it's been substantially changed, and then determine what amount that they would be able to receive?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things. First of all, for us to get into a situation where the government is trying to decide how much damage before we help you out with a tax grant, it really puts us in a bad situation. That's trying to navigate more than me personally as the drafter of the bill. I don't want it on the assessor of properties trying to, all right, yours wouldn't, you've only have 6 pieces of siding, but you have 12 pieces of siding. I really feel like that's asinine, for a word used earlier today, for us to go that deep into it. So I came up with the notion that if you suffer damage, period, we're going to help you. And then number 2, your property is only what you owe for 2024. Moving forward, you will be reassessed. And whatever you're reassessed for 25 will reflect what took place in this storm. So this has nothing to do with what your property will look like being assessed moving forward right now. And each property assessor and if we need to go out and recess, but each property assessor has the authority to say, all right, you are damaged. It's not habitable right now. So they're able to set whatever your rate that you need to pay for the value of your property as what it is damaged currently until it gets whole. That's what's been explained to me.
Representative Barrett.
Thank you, and I appreciate the explanation. And again, you started out by saying we can't make everybody whole. My concern is that this bill might go beyond making people whole. If they've had less damage than what their tax bill is, we're going to pay them more than what they've actually incurred damage. Does that make sense?
Chairman Faison.
I would dare say that $500 in taxes makes anybody whole.
Okay.
All right, Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. It's a good bill. It gets to what I think really is kind of hurting people, this immediacy of a bill coming due on February 28th or March 1st. My only question or concern, and you addressed it in your statement, is the second part of that piece of this legislation that talked about home being damaged, being by qualified assessor or the assessor of property by January 28th, 2025, today. What if someone didn't get their property assessed? That's my concern. You said we've done it all, but there's always, that one in a holler somewhere or that just didn't get to. Are we going to make any provisions for after this comes through that a person say, hey, I didn't know the assessor didn't come through. I'm up on a hill that my property was damaged to. How are you going to deal with those folks since there's a date certain that after today they're not part of this program?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative McKenzie, I actually love that question. I think it's a great question. That was one of my questions. And so what I have learned is our current capabilities for property assessing go way more than what you and I kind of grew up with, where people are driving out in hots and hollers and hills. Everything's now through Google Earth and through GIS. They have identified through TEMA and through our property assessors every single piece of property, real piece of property that was hit by the storm. There is no way that you were missed with anything. It's a great question, though. Thank you.
Representative Himmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor, for bringing this really necessary, needed legislation. Question is more like our process. I know, like my bank through my escrow pays my property taxes. So what is to prevent the bank from submitting for this and getting that payment back for the property taxes?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I thought I heard some over here. If your taxes have already been paid, you get to use this money for something else. And the only people who can apply for this grant are the people who are on the title.
Chairman Russell, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What if there's multiple properties a person owns?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This would apply to all your properties if they were destroyed.
Thank you. And on section 2, some of the sheriffs has work details for trustees. Would that allow them to take their trustees to different municipalities or boundaries and use them to clean up?
Chairman Faison.
I thought I could answer most questions, but I don't want to answer that. And maybe the comptroller could speak. He helped me draft this language. I can't speak to that.
Yeah, without objection, we'll go out of session. Mr. Comptroller, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jason Mumpower, Comptroller of the Treasury. And as somebody who lives in Upper East Tennessee, myself, I certainly appreciate the work of this committee. Representative Russell, in regard to your question, memorandums of understanding can be formed between municipalities and counties, or even across county lines through the work of the local governing bodies.
Representative Russell.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may, Mr. Chair, let me commend the work of the property assessors in Upper East Tennessee across the affected counties. They are really heroes. Their staff in the comptroller's office, in the comptroller's division of property assessments, we've had boots on the ground in every one of these affected counties, and for months now, working, including today. to assess the damage, and a lot of good work done by the property assessor's offices across Upper East Tennessee, and we greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Without objection, we're back in session. And Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Instead of just like Representative Barrett was asking, the damage, why don't we just go by FEMA recipient households? If FEMA went to the house and determined there was damage or property, that's an easy attainable record. And anybody on that list would then qualify.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only thought of that is our property assessors know better. They're elected official right there in that county. They know who got damaged better than what FEMA would know. And so my thought is we're going to stick with them, and they're already working with the comptroller. There's a direct relationship right there with them. And so that's why the genesis of working directly with them came to that.
Representative Mitchell, were you done?
I'm done.
Okay. Representative Renault, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Mr. Sponsor. I wanted to ask for clarification. So the assessor first let me ask this. Do you know in Tennessee if property taxes are paid in arrears, or do you pay them going forward in the future?
Chairman Faison.
They're paid in arrears. How that works? Yes, ma'am. You don't pay it in the future. And let me be clear. If it's escrowed and your mortgage company handles it, I guess legally, you could say it would be paying up front. But other than the rest of us that don't use a mortgage company to pay it, we pay it in arrears. And so you lived out 2024 in your property, then you owe your property for 2024 on February 28th, 2025.
And then sorry. It's okay. And then does the assessor assess at a particular time every year? I know I get my tax bill like roughly in the last quarter of the year. I assume that's when they do the reassessments. Less when they do it for my county. Is it the same across Tennessee?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From my understanding, the property assessor is immediately back at assessing, and they have a date certain that they have to get to the comptroller of every real piece of property in there by a certain date of each year.
Without objection, we're headed out of session. Mr. Comptroller, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Jason Mumpower, Comptroller of the Treasury. Countywide reassessments are done every 4, 5, or 6 years in most counties across the state. However, in instances of disaster like this, assessors get out on the ground to do immediate reassessments of the properties affected. Property tax bills are due to be mailed by the first Monday in October of every year. Again, property taxes are due no later than February 28th of the year after.
Representative Renault.
Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second. So my question, I guess, like going back to where I'm trying to get at or try to understand is if I assume that the reassessment for the properties that have been damaged has already occurred, most likely in these counties.
Yes.
So
up to and including work today. Yes.
Okay. And so their new tax assessment bill, likely for 2024, or no, sorry, 2024, reflects that for some portion of the year, their property was uninhabitable or damaged, so there's been some sort of reduction. So does this, the grant that's being offered back to the person is going to be on that reassessed amount that's a lower amount based on the new assessment?
What I can tell you is, again, work was even being done today to properly make sure the properties were assessed. And so as this legislation spells out, the grants in aid will be equal to the tax burden that person had for year 2024 plus 30%.
So that the tax, they already technically, I guess it sounds like to me, if it's already been reassessed, they've actually already received a credit for this, whatever the last portion of the year, and then they should have a future credit for next year until their property's made whole. Is that?
They will have a different property value next year or the year we're in, 2025 right now. And so their property For example, currently, if it was damaged and has been reassessed, then they're living in 2025 with a new assessment.
Representative. Good. Representative Barrett, do you have a question? Comptroller?
Yes, just follow up, and I'm trying to clarify here just to make sure, because I want to vote for this. You said all the assessments have been done on the properties that were damaged by the flood.
Yes, to my knowledge, they have, yes.
So the question is, have these properties all then been adjusted downward from the date of the flood going forward so that their tax bill that they receive for 24 will be reduced by that amount?
That is my understanding, yes. But let me be specific that the language of this bill is to provide a grant and aid equal to the amount of tax due for 2024 plus 30%.
Representative Barrett.
And that's what I'm trying to get at, Mr. Comptroller, is to make sure that the amount of tax due is the accurate amount and that they're not still being billed for the full year for having an improvement on their property that is no longer there or that has been damaged. If that calculation's already been done and these bills have been adjusted downward and they're only getting that tax bill plus 30% as part of this, then I'm all for it. My concern is that there would be people that would be paying, be applying for reimbursement plus the 30% when they have not yet received the downward adjustment in their special assessment.
Again, to my knowledge, all of those reassessments have been completed, yes, and adjusted as to the time of the damage.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that answer.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Without
Thank you.
objection, we're going back into session. And Leader Alexander, you're recognized.
It was just to comment about why can't we use FEMA's, assessments. Thank you. Brain dead at this point. So, and the real reason here is FEMA only pays for a primary residence home. And we have farms that have no home on them that are paying, farmers are paying property taxes on a farm that no longer exists. Understand? So I just wanted to answer that back. Sorry.
Chairman Howe, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move previous question.
All right, previous questions called. We've got a second. We're ready to vote. And Madam Clerk, call the roll and take the vote.
Representative Alexander.
Aye.
Alexander votes aye. Ashley. Ashley votes aye. Barrett. Barrett votes aye. Ben. Ben votes aye. Burkhart. Burkhart votes aye. Darby. Darby votes aye. Harris. Harris votes aye. Hemmer. Hemmer votes aye. Howell. Howell votes aye. Hurt. Hurt votes aye. Jones of Unicoi. Jones votes aye. Kiesling. McKenzie. McKenzie votes aye. Mitchell. Mitchell votes aye. Moon. Moon votes aye. Pearson. Powell. Renault. Renew votes aye. Russell. Russell votes aye. Scarborough. Scarborough votes aye. Stinnett. Stinnett votes aye. Towns.
I vote for Faison.
Towns.
Is that an aye? Yeah. Got something for Faison. I'm gonna get you right.
Towns votes aye. Travis. Travis votes aye. Warner. Warner votes aye. Vice Chairman Holsey. Chairman Hill. Chairman Hill votes aye. Mr. Chairman, you have 22 ayes.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you. The ayes have it. House Bill 6007 moves to Finance, Ways and Means. That concludes our calendar. Before we go, do any members have any announcements? Seeing none, members, thank you for your work. And without objection, we're adjourned.